The internet stopped scrolling the second this story broke. Because this wasn't just drama, this was devastation in real time. Remy Ma, one of the toughest voices in hip-hop, allegedly breaking down behind closed doors after Papoose finally revealed why the Eazy block walked away from her. Not rumors, not vague shade. A reason. And once that reason started circulating, the entire narrative flipped overnight. Fans who thought they understood the situation suddenly realized they'd only been watching the surface. What was hidden underneath was pain, betrayal, and a truth so sharp it allegedly left Remy in tears. According to whispers spreading like wildfire, this revelation didn't come gently. It came late, it came cold, and it came after months of silence that people mistook for strength. Insiders claim the explanation hit Remy harder than any diss ever could, because it wasn't about clout or headlines. It was about choices, loyalty, and consequences nobody wanted to admit out loud. Social media erupted instantly. Twitter spaces exploded. Old clips resurfaced. Lyrics were reanalyzed like confessions, and fans started asking the question that changes everything. What if Remy wasn't abandoned? What if she was left behind? What made it worse was the timing. Papoose allegedly chose now to speak, now to explain, now to let the truth breathe, and the internet took that as confirmation that something had been festering for a long time. Tears weren't weakness anymore. They were proof that this story cut deeper than anyone knew. And once emotion enters the chat, there's no going back. Because if this reason is real, it doesn't just rewrite the breakup, it rewrites everything we thought we knew. The story didn't surface gently. It crashed into the timeline like a siren, dragging years of unresolved tension with it. Remy Ma wasn't trending because of a verse, a performance, or a comeback moment. She was trending because people were saying she cried, not on camera, not for sympathy, but privately, after Papoose allegedly revealed why the Eazy block finally walked away. And that detail alone shifted the entire tone. This wasn't petty beef. This wasn't internet theatrics. This was heartbreak framed as explanation, and the internet lined in immediately. According to alleged insiders, the reveal didn't come in a public statement or a messy post. It came in a private conversation that had been avoided for months. A conversation that everyone around them knew needed to happen, but nobody wanted to trigger. Sources claim Papoose finally broke his silence and explained what really pushed Eazy block away, not rumors, not speculation, but a reason rooted in patterns, decisions, and unresolved conflicts that had been building quietly. And when Remy heard it, the reaction wasn't anger. It was tears. That detail alone shook fans who have watched Remy survive things that would have broken most people. If that explanation brought her to tears, people knew it had to cut deep. Social media erupted almost instantly. Twitter threads popped up dissecting every possible meaning behind the phrase, "why he left." Fans replayed old interviews, old lyrics, old Instagram lives, searching for signs they missed. Some claimed the answer had been hidden in plain sight the whole time. Others argued this was revisionist history being weaponized after the fact. But one thing was undeniable: the narrative had changed. This wasn't about Remy being rejected. It was about Remy being confronted with a truth she hadn't been ready to face. Insiders claimed the reason had nothing to do with clout or cheating rumors the internet had obsessed over. Instead, it allegedly centered on emotional distance, constant chaos, and the weight of unresolved public drama. According to whispers, Papoose explained that Eazy block didn't walk away suddenly. He withdrew slowly, after feeling boxed into a situation where every move became content and every disagreement became public speculation. That explanation, insiders say, hit Remy hard because it forced her to see herself through someone else's eyes, not as a legend, not as a survivor, but as a partner whose world had become too heavy to stay inside. Fans split immediately. Some rushed to Remy's defense, calling the alleged explanation unfair and one-sided. Others said the tears made sense, arguing that realization hurts more than rejection, because rejection can be blamed outward. Realization turns inward. And that's what made this moment so devastating. It wasn't about losing Eazy block. It was about understanding why holding on hadn't been possible. Then the reactions started piling in from the culture. Artists posted cryptic messages about accountability and growth. Others referenced hard conversations and truths nobody wants to hear. Fans interpreted every vague caption as commentary. Even silence became suspicious. Papoose's name trended alongside Remy's, with people debating whether he was wrong for finally speaking or wrong for waiting so long. According to alleged sources, he hadn't planned to say anything at all, but felt the narrative had spiraled too far from reality. That decision, to explain instead of ignore, may have been the most painful one of all. What made the moment explode was the emotional contrast. Remy Ma, known for her toughness, allegedly crying in private, shattered the armor people thought she wore permanently. It reminded fans that strength doesn't cancel hurt. That survival doesn't erase vulnerability. Clips of her old interviews about love and loyalty resurfaced, now reframed as foreshadowing instead of confidence. The internet is ruthless that way. It rewrites the past once it thinks it understands the present. By the end of the day, the story had stopped being about Eazy Block alone. It became a larger conversation about timing, truth, and what happens when explanations come too late. Fans weren't asking who was right anymore. They were asking why honesty had taken so long and how much damage silence had already done. And hovering over everything was one chilling realization. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the first crack, because once emotions spill into the open like this, they don't go back quietly. The second wave hit with a different kind of force, slower, heavier, and far more unsettling. Once the tears entered the narrative, people stopped treating this like a breakup story and started treating it like a reckoning. The internet didn't just want to know what was said. It wanted to know why it landed the way it did. And that curiosity turned invasive fast. Insiders claimed the explanation Papoose allegedly gave wasn't a single sentence or a neat excuse. It was a layered breakdown of moments that had stacked over time, moments Remy may have brushed past, but Eazy Block reportedly felt trapped under. That detail changed everything. Because a list feels different than an accusation. A list implies patience, endurance, a long time coming. According to whispers spreading through burner accounts and private chats, the explanation centered on cycles, constant public scrutiny, emotional whiplash from unresolved situations, the inability to keep anything sacred. Insiders alleged Papoose explained that Eazy Block didn't feel like a partner in a relationship. He felt like a character in a narrative that never stopped evolving. And when Remy heard that framing, it allegedly broke something open. Tears weren't about losing a person. They were about realizing how she may have been experienced by someone she cared about. That realization cuts deeper than betrayal. Social media seized on that angle immediately. Think pieces exploded overnight about how public lives erode private bonds. Fans argued whether fame excuses chaos or amplifies responsibility. Old live streams resurfaced where Remy laughed off drama, now reframed as moments that may have weighed on someone else quietly. The internet loves reframing. It turns context into consequence with surgical precision. And as more clips circulated, the narrative hardened. This wasn't abandonment, it was burnout. Papoose's role in all of this became more complicated with every hour. Some praised him for finally telling the truth, arguing that silence had allowed lies to metastasize. Others accused him of choosing the worst possible moment to speak, saying explanations after the damage is done feel more like absolution than honesty. Insiders claimed he wrestled with the decision, knowing whatever he said would hurt. But according to those same whispers, he felt watching Remy be painted as something she wasn't, or something she couldn't see, was doing more harm than the truth ever could. The culture reacted in fragments. Some artists posted about hard conversations saving future pain. Others warned about telling your side when someone is already bleeding. Fans read every post like tea leaves. Even people with no connection to the situation suddenly had opinions, dissecting emotional accountability like a sport. The name, Eazy Block, trended alongside phrases like emotional safety and too much too fast, reframing him from antagonist to casualty in the eyes of some viewers. That reframing was brutal for Remy's supporters, who felt the narrative was slipping away from her humanity. Insiders added another layer that pushed the story from sad to explosive. One alleged source claimed Remy had suspected the reason long before it was confirmed, but hearing it said out loud made it real. That detail, suspicion versus confirmation, matters. Suspicions can be managed. Confirmations demand reckoning. According to the Whisper Network, the tears came not because the reason was shocking, but because it was familiar. Familiar truths hurt the most. They strip away denial and leave nothing but reflection. The internet responded by rewriting timelines. Fans pointed to moments where Remy seemed distant, distracted, or overwhelmed, suggesting the signs were always there. Others pushed back, saying hindsight bias was turning normal relationship struggles into a diagnosis. The debate got heated. Lines were drawn, but the emotional weight of the story kept growing. This wasn't a scandal people could meme away easily. It was too raw, too recognizable, too human. Then came the alleged aftermath. Insiders claimed Remy withdrew after the conversation, canceling appearances, leaning on close friends, trying to process privately what the public was now tearing apart. Papoose reportedly stayed quiet again, letting the explanation stand on its own without further commentary. That restraint was interpreted in every possible way. Some saw respect, others saw distance. But one thing was clear: the damage couldn't be undone by clarification alone. By the end of the second phase, the conversation had shifted from blame to consequence. People weren't asking who hurt who anymore. They were asking how much unspoken truth can accumulate before it explodes. Remy Ma's tears became symbolic, not of weakness, but of the cost of carrying narratives too long without interruption. And as the internet settled into that realization, a heavier question loomed in the background, unanswered and uncomfortable. If this explanation caused that much pain, what else has been left unsaid? The third wave arrived not with noise, but with gravity. By now, the internet wasn't speculating for entertainment, it was processing impact. Remy Ma's alleged tears had transformed the entire situation from rumor to reckoning, and the question was no longer what Papoose revealed, but what that revelation changed. Insiders claimed the emotional fallout didn't end with that conversation. According to whispers, it lingered, heavy and unresolved, seeping into every corner of Remy's world. People close to her allegedly noticed a shift, quieter energy, canceled plans, a withdrawal that felt less like strategy and more like self-protection. That silence wasn't weakness. It was someone trying to breathe after the ground moved beneath them. The internet, however, does not pause for healing. As Remy stepped back, narratives stepped forward to fill the space. Commentators began reframing the story again, this time as inevitability. This was always going to happen. Too much history, too many unresolved chapters. The idea that the ending was per-written gained traction, and with it came a colder tone. Sympathy slowly morphed into analysis. Analysis hardened into judgment. People started speaking about Remy as though the pain itself was proof of fault. That shift was brutal, and it exposed how quickly compassion expires online. Insiders claimed the explanation Papoose gave continued to echo in Remy's mind, not because it was cruel, but because it was quiet. There were no accusations, no raised voices, just clarity. And clarity can be devastating when it forces you to confront patterns you thought were survival mechanisms. According to those close to the situation, Remy didn't dispute what was said. That detail mattered. It suggested recognition, not denial. Recognition is where grief begins because it removes the comfort of misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Eazy Block's absence from the conversation became its own statement. He didn't speak, didn't clarify, didn't capitalize on the moment. Some saw restraint, others saw confirmation. The internet filled the void by projecting intent, turning his silence into whatever suited the narrative they preferred. That ambiguity allowed people to recast him as everything from villain to victim, depending on the angle. And with each retelling, Remy's pain was repositioned, sometimes as collateral, sometimes as consequence. Papoose's role remained the most contested. Some praised him for finally breaking the cycle of silence, arguing that truth, even painful truth, prevents deeper wounds later. Others accused him of emotional negligence, saying explanations offered after the damage feel more like self-clearing than care. Insiders suggested he understood both reactions and accepted that there was no version of this where everyone walked away clean. That understanding, according to whispers, is why he said nothing more. No follow-ups, no clarifications, no defending himself against backlash. He let the explanation stand alone, knowing it would be dissected regardless. The culture responded by zooming out. This stopped being about three people and became a broader conversation about public lives, private pain, and the cost of delayed honesty. Podcasts debated whether transparency should be immediate or measured. Commentators asked whether silence protects or poisons. Fans argued over whether Remy was owed this truth sooner or whether timing would never have softened the blow. There were no answers, only perspectives, and perspectives multiplied faster than facts. What made the third wave so heavy was how familiar it felt. People recognized themselves in the story. The moment when someone finally says the thing you feared but never confirmed. The moment realization replaces hope. That universality stripped the gossip of its distance. This wasn't just about celebrities anymore. It was about human limits. And when stories tap into that, they linger. Insiders claimed Remy began reframing the situation privately, not as loss, but as information. Painful information, but necessary. That shift didn't erase the tears, but it gave them context. Grief followed by understanding doesn't vanish, it reorganizes. According to those close to her, Remy wasn't focused on blame. She was focused on recalibration. What does life look like when the narrative you believe dissolves? That question haunted the conversation online, too. As days passed, the frenzy cooled into something quieter and more permanent: reinterpretation. Old moments were no longer weaponized as proof, they became lessons. The outrage softened into reflection. People stopped demanding statements and started accepting that some truths don't arrive cleanly or kindly. And through it all, Remy remained mostly out of sight, reclaiming privacy in a story that had been anything but private. By the time the third wave settled, one thing was clear. This wasn't a scandal with a winner or loser. It was an emotional collision where truth arrived late and landed hard. Remy Ma's tears weren't the climax, they were the acknowledgement. And acknowledgements, once made, change everything. The internet would move on, as it always does. But for the people involved, the story had already done its work. If you're still here, understand this: you didn't just watch a piece of celebrity news. You watched a moment where a story stopped being entertainment and started being emotional truth. These are the moments that don't disappear when the timeline refreshes. They linger. They reshape how people are seen, how past choices are interpreted, and how silence is understood. Once tears enter a narrative like this, there is no going back to surface-level takes. This is exactly why you need to stay locked in. Like this video because engagement keeps these conversations from being flattened into lazy headlines and half-truths. Comment because your perspective matters, whether you see accountability, heartbreak, delayed honesty, or something more complicated. This story is still being processed in real time. And subscribe because when the next piece drops, a clarification, a response, a quiet move, or a complete pivot, you don't want to hear about it secondhand after the narrative has already hardened. Missing the next chapter isn't neutral. It means letting other people decide what this moment meant without you seeing how it unfolded. And in stories like this, context is everything. Stay connected, stay watching. Because when the internet moves on, the impact doesn't disappear, it just gets misunderstood. And the only way to keep up with what's really happening is to be here before the silence starts speaking louder than words.